My husband swore he had frozen to death under the ice on the North Slope. But apparently, it wasn't just his body that frozen. It was my trust in him too. When Ethan left, I was only 25 years old and left with a 6-month-old baby and a mountain of debt. Everyone felt sorry for me. I had been mourning for a year and a half. But you know what I learned in Alaska's freezing cold? Some wolves use and benefit from the warmth of the sheepskin before they take it off. Unlike Sarafina, who caught him in an Australian boutique. What gave my husband away was a satellite image above the 60th parallel. And at that very moment, I realized he wasn't just dead, that the real game had only just begun. It was a year and a half ago, a stormy November day. News came that the single-engine Cessna Ethan had rented had crashed while en route to sign a contract for an oil company in North Slope. The crash site was inaccessible due to weather conditions. After weeks of searching, authorities found only charred metal fragments, and worst of all, a piece of charred skin tissue claimed to belong to Ethan. Identification was made through DNA tests and dental records provided by his mother, who was crying her eyes out. Grief had clouded my judgment at that moment. I was devastated, thinking that my husband, my beloved spouse, the father of my dreams, was now just a memory. At that time, I was struggling in our small house in Anchorage, under pressure from lawyers and creditors. Ethan was presumed to have left behind a debt of $3 million, all from loans taken out to invest in risky mining projects. My father-in-law and mother-in-law, Martha and Robert, played their roles as elderly and helpless people perfectly. Martha held my hands and said, "My dear daughter, Sterling is gone and left us with this mountain of debt. His father and I are old. We can only rely on you." Identity. Perhaps you have faced similar situations, moments when you sacrificed yourself because of your love and loyalty to someone. If so, you will understand the pain at the beginning of this story. Because of my loyalty, I took over the management of the valuable Tundra Land Trust near Denali National Park, the only inheritance my father left me, under the pretext of paying off the debts. My career had been overshadowed by Ethan's. Before I got married, I was a successful environmental impact analyst, nicknamed X-Ray, because of my ability to find small loopholes in the contracts of large energy companies. However, when Ethan said our family needed a full-time mother, not a working horse, I put my career on hold. Like Simone, I was too exhausted to think, so I signed every piece of paper he put in front of me without reading it. Now, 18 months later, most of the debt was paid off. Of course, I had to sell my father's inheritance. I had sold off the most valuable pieces of the Tundra Foundation. I was tired, pale, but finally getting out of the debt cycle. It happened on a Tuesday night, one of Anchorage's most unpleasant winter nights, when a cold snap rattled the windows. I called Kai, my former colleague and fellow Alaskan, a knowledgeable and cool-headed lawyer. I asked him to do one last assessment before selling the rest of the Tundra Foundation. Kai was more skeptical than I was. "Anya, you know that accident report from North Slope was always weird. The forensics team rushed it. The deaths were sudden and unnecessary." Kai's first report was about the shell companies Ethan had transferred his debts to. But the real bombshell came from my analysis. Shortly after Ethan's death last year, a new thermal imaging system had been installed to monitor the Foundation's largest remaining land parcel, that famous Deer Pass area. It was expensive, but it was a requirement for insurance. That night, tossing and turning, I was reviewing high-resolution thermal images taken at random times. Deer Pass, located above the 65th parallel, was a completely deserted and frozen place in winter. The image should have shown only white, blue, and purple colors. But I saw a red dot. Heat. I zoomed in. It had to be a shelter, an underground refuge. And at the entrance to that shelter, among the snowmobile tracks, there was a small silhouette. The silhouette was very short, but its posture was familiar, despite the thick hooded clothing. But what was truly shocking was the female figure standing next to the silhouette, with voluminous curly hair. My heart began to flutter in my chest like a bird. Without taking my eyes off the screen, my instinct at that moment mirrored Serafina's. "Stay calm. Observe carefully." I immediately called Kai. My voice was ice cold. "Kai, find all satellite and thermal recordings from that area for the last 48 hours, especially moments when these silhouettes might become clear." Kai's response came 4 hours later, before dawn. Our systems had been compromised. The video recordings were being deleted at regular intervals, starting with the last 48 hours. This meant someone was constantly checking this data, and only one person had the technological knowledge to set up and control this system. Ethan, if you're questioning whether this is true, stop for a moment and consider subscribing to my channel, because the betrayal I'm about to tell you might be the biggest scam you've ever seen. Kai quickly tried to access the system's backup recordings. At that moment, a 2-frame sequence that appeared on my screen hit me like a punch to the stomach. A woman with short, dark, curly hair was entering the bunker in a luxurious ski suit. The man next to her was in a thick snowsuit. But the moment he took off his helmet, I saw that distinctly sharp jawline and the small mole behind his left ear. Ethan. No, Ethan Sterling. Alive, healthy, and in the freezing wilderness of Alaska, with another woman. At that moment, the glint of 3 years of grief, debt, sleepless nights, and the inheritance I'd sold burst forth from a luxury store in Sydney and crashed against the desolate, snowy landscape of Alaska. The frame immediately behind it held an even greater shock. The woman gently parted the blanket she held. The thermal image captured the warmth of a tiny baby figure inside. The baby was about 6 months old, exactly the same age as my baby. Tears didn't stream from my eyes. I was too tired, too angry to cry. This was less heart-wrenching pain, and more a cold, calculating rage that froze my brain. Unlike Simone, who gave birth to her 3rd child while I was battling mastitis at home, Ethan had started a new life with another woman at the same time he stole my inheritance. I recognized her. Her name was Tessa. She was a young lawyer who had left Ethan's former legal counsel department. Ethan always told me, "She's just an employee, baby," just like Sterling told Serafina. The smirk inside that helmet screamed that the $3 million debt I had to pay off to pay everything my father left me was never a loss, but rather dirty money secretly transferred abroad to buy that luxury ski house, that new baby, and that expensive diamond necklace Tessa wore. I don't know. Maybe my husband's monstrous act completely numbed me. I locked myself in the room. Just like Serafina had done, I locked the door and slid down to the cold floor. On the wall opposite, our wedding photo hung. Ethan's warm, bright smile now looked repulsive and fake. My eyes froze. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I wasn't just a grieving wife anymore. Inside me, that X-ray ability I'd kept hidden for years, the ability to find the deepest tricks in contracts, had awakened. I got up. I pulled out my old disposable phone from the bottom of my suitcase. I inserted a hidden SIM card I'd bought beforehand. With trembling hands, I dialed Kai's number. I took a deep breath when I heard his sleepy but reassuring voice. My voice was as cold and firm as the Alaskan mountain ice. Kai, it's me. There's something very important you need to do right now. Immediately activate the Tundra Land Trust's conservation protocol. Completely separate everything my father left behind from all of Ethan's assets, and secretly review the entire accident file from 3 years ago. Ethan is alive. Kai was silent for quite a while. Then, with a voice full of surprise and confidence, he replied, "Understood, Anya. I'll start right now." The next morning, winter fog enveloped Anchorage. I left the house under the pretext of meeting a client with my mother-in-law. My destination wasn't a luxurious office building, but a small, seemingly ordinary coffee shop where Kai read the newspaper every morning. Kai was waiting for me. A steaming cup of coffee sat before him. He sighed kindly when he saw the deep, dark circles under my eyes after the sleepless night. "I ordered you some hot ginger tea. It'll warm you up." I didn't beat around the bush. I placed the flash drive containing the thermal images and satellite sequences on the table. Kai plugged it into his laptop and watched each second carefully. When the footage finished, his face hardened. Shock had given way to controlled anger. He took off his glasses. His voice trembled. "This scoundrel! How dare he do such a monstrous thing? He's fooled us all. He's circumvented the law." At the height of the tension, anyone who experienced this moment would gasp, including me. I tried to stop my leg from trembling. I spoke with the strange calmness of someone who had hit rock bottom in pain. "I want you to help me get back everything that belongs to me and my family. I don't want a single penny to fall into the hands of those con artists. Help me start the divorce proceedings and expose their fraud." Kai nodded decisively. He pulled out a thick file. "These are the oddities I found last night after you called. I asked some old friends in the judiciary to help review the accident case. There were a few suspicious points we missed in our grief at the time." Kai pointed to a photocopy of the dental records. "This is Ethan's dental history, used to match the body. But look closely. The report date has been altered. In fact, this record was re-edited at a private clinic just 6 months before the accident." A wave of rage surged through my body. His death wasn't an accident. It was a meticulously planned scheme. He had flawlessly orchestrated his own disappearance. Kai then turned to the page with the DNA analysis. "This is the DNA result. The tissue sample found at the accident scene matches your mother-in-law 99%. Theoretically, this confirms the relationship, but I suspect a gap in this case. It's very likely the sample belongs not to Ethan, but to a close relative with the same bloodline. Every word was a new nail in the coffin of my marriage. I remembered. In the months before the accident, Ethan was frequently traveling under the pretext of business trips, secretly talking on the phone. It turned out he was busy plotting his own death. I looked into Kai's eyes with determination. "Kai, immediately build a legal firewall. Prepare the documents to separate all my assets, including the inheritance my mother and father left me, from the marriage. At the same time, secretly gather evidence of his family's money laundering activities." Kai put his hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry, I'll do it immediately. You've become more mature and stronger than your father could ever imagine. You continue to play your role. Leave the legal part to me. We'll dismantle his plot and make them pay for every tear you've shed." As I left the cafe, the rain hadn't stopped, but my heart was no longer cold. With Kai by my side, my father's inheritance, and I knew justice awaited me. When I returned to the cold house, I began to play my role flawlessly. I was no longer the generous bride willing to pay for every ridiculous expense of my in-laws. My face was constantly sorrowful, and I complained about my financial difficulties. That night at dinner, instead of the usual luxurious salmon and crab cakes, I asked the cook to prepare simple dishes: cranberry porridge and canned salmon, the kind Alaskans love. Martha sat at the table, frowning at the modest meal and tapping her fork and knife on the plate. Are we going to starve in this house? What is this? Are you trying to kill us with malnutrition? I took a bite of the porridge, which left a bitter taste in my throat, and looked at her with bloodshot eyes. I'm sorry, Anne. Things have been going very badly lately, just like with the Australian project. The new mining client stopped paying, and the company has been owed money by the employees for months. I had to sell the last of my jewelry to pay the bank interest. There's not a penny left in the house right now. Please be patient and eat sparingly. When she heard there was no money, Martha's face changed. She didn't believe me, and her gaze swept me from head to toe. Don't give me fairy tales. How is it possible that the manager of a large group subsidiary doesn't have money for food? Or are you saving the money to support a lover? I acted deeply hurt, and tears fell onto my plate. How can you say that, Anne? I sold my dowry, my house, everything for this family. What do I have left to hide? If you don't believe me, look at the stack of foreclosure notices I left on the living room table. I showed her the stack of fake debt documents I'd had Kai prepare. Her face turned even paler as she read. The thousands of dollars in debt and the debt collector's threats made her tremble. She threw the papers onto the table and turned to me with a look of panic and hatred. How is it possible that we have so much debt? What have you done? I covered my face and cried inconsolably. I don't know. Interest keeps rising. Now they're threatening to foreclose on the house and furniture. I don't know how we're going to make ends meet next month. Martha said nothing more. She left her meal unfinished and silently went to her room. I knew that the fear of poverty and the anxiety of losing everything had begun to gnaw at her. In the following days, I cut off all luxury spending. No expensive medicines, no beauty treatments, and I even insisted on saving on the electricity bill. Martha was on edge. She was afraid of having to support a useless daughter-in-law and losing her long-standing source of income. I saw Martha begin to move around stealthily through the camera I had hidden in the living room. Taking advantage of my absence, she sneaked into the study, where my father's valuable antiques, some of which were Alaskan native artifacts, were kept. She caressed each bronze statue, each porcelain vase, with greedy eyes. Then she took out her phone and whispered a call. "Hello, is that you? I have some antiques I urgently need to sell. Authentic, good things. If you can come and see them and give me a good price, take them. I need the money right away. 2 days after discovering the truth behind my husband's fake death and Martha's poisoned tea, I received a call from Kai. He summoned me to his office. He was waiting with a thick audit file on my mother-in-law's financial situation. Kai's office smelled of old paper and mahogany. Kai placed the file on the desk and pushed it towards me. There was a mixture of seriousness and contempt on his face. "Anya, you need to prepare yourself. What you're about to see isn't just an emotional deception. It's an entire financial crime network disguised as an honorable family." With trembling hands, I turned to the first page. What I saw were my mother-in-law's bank statements for the past 18 months. The numbers were staggering. My mother-in-law, who constantly complained of being ill and living off my charity, was managing tens of thousands of dollars in cash flow. Kai pointed to the incoming transfers and explained, "Look, every month huge sums of money are transferred to their accounts from shell companies abroad. The concept was always charitable donation or medical aid. But in reality, this was money from shell companies Ethan set up to launder money. I looked at the names of the companies and felt a tightness in my chest. While I was selling my inheritance to pay off debts, they were sitting on a mountain of dirty money. They were playing the role of the old and helpless, squeezing the last penny of my hard-earned money while helping their son transfer money abroad. Kai turned to the next page. His voice was more serious. And this is the most terrifying part. Most of this money, after passing through several intermediary accounts, flowed into a secret trust fund in Switzerland, Aurora Trust. I asked some of my contacts to investigate. The beneficiaries of this fund are Ethan and his son. I put down the file, and a shiver ran down my spine. Aurora. The name Tessa gave her baby. He had calculated everything. He had used his parents as a front and his wife as a means of making money and a distraction. All of this was to build a financial empire for his new family. I looked at Kai, my gaze harsh, not a single tear in it. Kai, is this evidence enough to indict them for money laundering? Kai nodded decisively. More than enough. But we need a little more time to solidify the case, so they can't escape when we strike. Sign this power of attorney, and I'll quietly work with the Economic Crimes Unit. I took the pen and signed with a decisive stroke, as if severing all remaining emotional ties. I didn't just want a divorce. I wanted them to pay the price for the dirty money they had amassed on my suffering in a legal court. As I left the office, I said to myself, Ethan, you love money so much, I'll use your own greed to send you to jail. I needed the perfect bait to carry out my plan and lure the snake out of its hole. I drove away from the noisy city to a quiet farmhouse near the Red River. This was the sanctuary of old Marcus, my father's first mentor, who taught me to see the soul of antiques and was the country's finest ceramic restorer. As I entered the moss-covered brick courtyard, the scent of baked clay mingled with the aroma of brewed tea, calming me somewhat. Old Marcus sat at a stone table, his white hair billowing in the wind. He narrowed his eyes and smiled gently when he saw me. Anya, my child, it's been a long time. Come in, have some hot tea. I sat down opposite him, my heart pounding. I didn't dare look him in the eyes, fearing he would discover my sinister plan. After a few minutes of meaningless conversation, I mustered the courage and told him the whole story. Ethan, the betrayal, my mother-in-law's plot to rob me. When I got to the part about the poisoned tea and the dirty money, old Marcus's eyes flashed with an unusual rage. He slammed the cup down on the table. His voice trembled with emotion. How can there be so many heartless people in the world? Your father was an honest man his whole life. And look, what kind of son-in-law she married. A monster. I bowed my head, my voice cracking. Uncle Marcus, I've come to ask you for a favor today. I know it goes against your professional principles, but I really have no other choice. Old Marcus glared at me sternly. What do you want me to do? Don't tell me to make a fake peace to deceive someone. In my life, I've only done restoration to save the beauty of the past. I've never been complicit in deception. I knelt before him, tears streaming down my cheeks. Please, Uncle Marcus, not for profit, to unmask a much bigger deception. To get Ethan out of his hole, I need a flawless Inuit whalebone carving, one that could fool even the most expert eyes. He's so greedy that only a treasure of this magnitude could trap him. Old Marcus remained silent. The wrinkles on his face reflected his inner struggle. He was an honorable man who hated deceit, but he loved me like his own daughter. After a long time, he sighed. "Get up, Anya. I understand your pain. I will help you. Not to break my principles, but to teach that scoundrel a lesson in your father's name. But recreating that legendary carving technique, the glow of the sun after the storm, is not easy." I wiped away my tears, my eyes shining with hope. I knew that if he agreed, my plan was already halfway successful. I looked at him with determination. "I know it's difficult, but I trust your golden hands. And I've brought the most important thing for you to create this masterpiece." With trembling hands, I opened a small box I took from my bag and placed it on the stone table. Inside, on a red velvet bed, lay an ancient piece of whalebone, about the size of my palm. It emitted a pale, mesmerizing golden light. Old Marcus's eyes widened as soon as he saw the piece. His trembling hands approached, but he paused, as if afraid to touch. He murmured, his voice hoarse with admiration, "My God, this is authentic. A Thule period whale god carving. I thought I'd only see this piece in books." I nodded slightly, a great pain in my heart. "Yes, Uncle Marcus, this is the only authentic piece my mother left me. The soul of my family." Old Marcus put on his magnifying glasses and examined every detail, every reflection, with awe. For a man who had dedicated his life to this art, this piece was more valuable than gold. It was the key to unlocking the secrets of a technique lost for centuries. "Anya, do you know its value? This piece alone could fetch a fortune. What do you plan to do with it?" I took a deep breath, my voice steady. "I want you to grind it into dust." "What?" Old Marcus was stunned. His glasses almost fell off. "Are you crazy? Destroying a national treasure to make a fake?" I looked at him, holding back my tears. "I'm not crazy. I know its value, but if I keep it, it will remain just a piece in a box. But if we use it to create a complete carved statue, even a fake one, it will become the weapon that will bring me justice. I need the original bone paste, the original varnish to fool Ethan and his experts. Only by sacrificing this piece can I capture that greedy wolf." The room fell silent. The old man looked at the piece, then at me. Understanding the pain and determination in my eyes, he knew that at that moment, nothing mattered to me more than avenging my father and myself. Finally, he nodded. He stroked the piece one last time, as if bidding farewell. "Very well, I will help you. Using the material I take from this piece and my secret techniques, I will recreate this carving. It will be as real as life itself, the sweetest and the deadliest trap." I watched him take the piece to the workshop, and I felt a knot in my stomach. "Mother, I'm sorry. To protect family honor, I have to destroy your memory." Old Marcus's workshop carried the ancient scents of earth and sea. The warmth from the wall-mounted furnace weighed heavily on the air. 3 days after I sacrificed that ominous piece of whalebone, he called me. On the table, I saw the figurine lying on an old velvet cloth. My eyes widened. It was more than a statue. It depicted the sea spirit from Inuit mythology. It was small enough to fit in the palm of my hand, but it carried a millennia-old story. Old Marcus had recreated the statue using an authentic piece of bone my father had left me, employing a lost Thule technique. The veins on the surface of the piece gleamed with a cold golden sheen, a perfect illusion that even the most skilled expert wouldn't recognize as a forgery. Old Marcus sighed wearily. "I did it, but it was the hardest and most flawed work I've ever done in my life. I hope it's worth it, Anya." I took the figurine in my hands. Its coldness and weight pressed me to the ground. "It will be worth it, Uncle Marcus. This will be the heaviest evidence to be placed on the scales of justice." As I was leaving the workshop, My phone vibrated with a call from Kai's office. His voice was cheerful. "Anya, things are going well. I just activated the Tundra Foundation's protection protocol. Everything remaining from your father's inheritance has been legally separated from Ethan's debts and assets. It is now untouchable." This news gave me a glimmer of hope. But the real bombshell was Dr. Harrison's sealed report, which arrived half an hour later. I opened the envelope I had placed next to my coffee. The title of the report changed the rhythm of my heart. Toxicological Analysis of T47 Root Mixture. Effect of inducing permanent infertility. If you're questioning whether this is true, stop for a moment and consider subscribing to my channel. Because the betrayal I'm about to tell you might be the biggest scam you've ever seen. My hands trembled as I read the report. The details confirmed Dr. Harrison's words. Odora had slowly poisoned me, taking away my right to be a mother. This wasn't just a financial loss. It was a piece of my soul. I closed my eyes. I knew I couldn't cry anymore. Grief had given way to cold, professional rage. This was no longer just a divorce case. It was an attempted murder case. The next day, I continued my performance at home. Martha and Robert were utterly desperate because of the fake poverty I had created. Martha's fear drove me to go even further. I watched, through a hidden camera, Martha selling what was left of my father's antique collection. In her hand was a sacred cedarwood mask belonging to the Alaskan Native Americans. This mask had been in our family for generations. Martha secretly took the mask outside and haggled with a cheap buyer. The buyer offered 1/10 of the mask's original value. And at that very moment, I didn't know that the tiny tracking chip I'd embedded in the base of that mask would reveal Ethan's biggest secret to me. Martha took the money, proudly pocketing her profit. Immediately after the sale, I sent her an encrypted email stating that I had to go to Sydney for an urgent matter. Now I was ready to catch the real prey. I instructed Kai, contact an art dealer in London named Arthur. Tell him about a legendary piece from Scandinavia, a whalebone sculpture called the Radiance of the Sea Spirit. Tell him that only a collector who truly respects heritage can acquire it. I knew Arthur's greed would cause the news to spread like wildfire in the art smuggling world. A week later, a message from Arthur landed in my encrypted email inbox. The message caught me completely off guard. Arthur wrote that he had received an astronomical offer for the statue and that the client was a mysterious Swiss-based millionaire named Mr. C. He added that Mr. C was surprisingly knowledgeable about the statue's history and technical details. As I read Arthur's next message, I gasped. Mr. C stated that he wanted to acquire the piece not only as a collector, but also as a third birthday gift for his newborn son. This was living proof of the new family he was forming with Tessa at the same time as me, and the life that had been stolen from me. I responded directly to Mr. C, Ethan, bypassing Arthur. As an anonymous seller identifying myself as the guardian of memories, I used a proud and demanding tone. Mr. C, inheritance is not a commodity for sale. I require you to prove not only your financial sufficiency, but also your integrity. I request that you send a list of any other items or antiques you possess as collateral. This was a trap built on arrogance and greed. Ethan would want to boast about his possessions to appear strong in negotiations. 3 days later, a protected PDF file arrived from Mr. C. My stomach clenched when I opened it. The image contained my father's favorite artifacts, a Thule-era warrior helmet, an ancient shaman drum, and many more. Everything I thought was safe in our vault 3 years ago, before Ethan's death. In the moments when Ethan entered the vault, under the pretext of checking and maintaining. He had replaced these authentic pieces with high-quality fakes. Now, these sacred artifacts were the cornerstone of his new life. His arrogance had become the greatest evidence for me to catch him red-handed. An anger erupted inside me, like an uncontrollable volcano. I threw my phone onto the table. "Sterling, you're a monster!" I whispered, my voice echoing in the empty room. This list was no longer an asset list, but his certificate of innocence. I immediately engaged in a tense psychological duel with Mr. C. He acted like an expert. I, on the other hand, was setting a trap by exploiting his amateurism. He asked me about the technical details of the carving. I used a joke my father and I had about whalebone carvings. At the bottom of the statue, there's a hidden North Star seal, supposedly used by the carver for the Sultan's favorite. This was a completely fabricated but ego-boosting detail. A few hours later, his reply came, "Fantastic! I remember that North Star seal. This is absolutely authentic. Tell me your price. I'll buy it no matter what." Ethan had fallen into the trap. His belief in the deceptive detail was definitive proof of his greed and limited expertise. Now all I had to do was lure him to Alaska, to the prison I had built myself. Things were starting to improve when Ethan's next move revealed a darker plan that would shock both Martha and me. While reviewing the financial reports from shady banking sources I'd obtained from Langston, I saw how desperate Ethan was to acquire the whale god statue. He had not only sold his stock, but had also mortgaged his family's last refuge, their historic fishing house in South Alaska. One morning, I overheard Ethan talking to his mother on Martha's phone. Martha's voice was shaky and tearful. "Sterling, my son, are you sure? That house is next to our ancestors' graves, 4 generations old. What will happen if we sell it? Where will we go when we get old?" Ethan's voice was cold and ruthless. "Mother, don't be sentimental. What will that dilapidated house give you? I need the money now for a big deal. Once I close the deal, I'll bring you to Switzerland. Do it for Marcellus's, his son's name from Tessa. Future. For me and for your grandson." Martha's voice instantly softened with the blind love she felt for her son's new family. "Okay, I'll sell it right away. It's all for my grandson's future." I threw the headphones onto the table. These people were digging their own graves. Selling the house would only hasten their bankruptcy. But what really mattered to me was Ethan's arrogance. His final demand to prove the piece was authentic. Mr. C, in a final email, requested a carbon-14 test and a certificate of ceramic paste spectrographic analysis. This was his last filter. Source. If the piece passed this scientific test, it had to be 100% authentic. Ethan trusted science, but he didn't know that science was the greatest weapon I would use to catch him. Old Marcus and I had anticipated this move. I immediately called Dr. Johnson, an old friend of my father's and a respected scientist. I handed him the small, authentic piece of whalebone and asked for a favor. "Doctor, please, just write whalebone carving specimen from a private collection on the certificate, but include all the original analysis results proving that the piece is from the 15th century Thule period. I will use this to bring a criminal to justice." Dr. Johnson was impressed by the beauty of the piece and knew my family's story. He thought for a moment and nodded decisively. "Understood, Anya. Science must sometimes be flexible to preserve the truth." 3 days later, I had the officially sealed certificate in my hands. The analysis confirmed that the specimen was 15th century and that its composition perfectly matched samples taken from ancient quarries. This was a certificate more real than the truth itself. I scanned the certificate and immediately sent it to Mr. C. I could picture his triumphant grin on the other end of the screen. He thought he was unstoppable, but he didn't know that this certificate wasn't the pinnacle of his ambitions, but the ticket to the abyss he was about to sink into. Ethan had blindly trusted the apparent truth of a lie. The moment Ethan sent his final email announcing he'd received his Carbon-14 certification, the cold rage inside me gave way to sharp determination. That day, everything in Anchorage froze, just like the emotions in this house. Ethan had fallen into the trap of science and his own arrogance. But before I could finish the game, I needed to bring an end to my in-laws. That evening's dinner wasn't like any I'd had in the last 3 years. On the table was Virginia ham, fresh crab cakes, and that special wine from 1982, the one my father had saved for his first grandchild. The aroma of the food didn't dispel the chill in the house. Martha and Robert sat down at the table, their eyes sparkling. Martha asked, "What is this feast all about? The other day you were saying we didn't have money for bread." With a forced smile, I poured her some wine. Its color was as thick as blood. "Eat, Mother. I thought it through well. The hard times are almost over. Tomorrow, everything will end, and our family will move on to a new phase." I wanted to offer a good dinner to say goodbye to the old times. Her eyes gleamed, probably thinking Ethan had sent money or had come to rescue me. Robert, in his wheelchair, made incomprehensible noises. Greed also gleamed in his eyes. I watched them. They were feasting on my grief, my father's legacy, and their own betrayals. I raised my glass and brought it to my lips. The bitterness of the wine flowed down my throat. I put the glass down on the table, the sharp clang breaking the false cheerfulness. I looked into Martha's eyes, my voice soft but sharp. "Is the food good, Mother? Enjoy it and remember it well, because this may be the last family dinner I prepare for you." Martha stopped chewing the piece of salmon on her plate. Her instinct told her something was wrong. She swallowed. "What do you mean by last meal? Are you going somewhere?" I didn't answer. I just smiled. That smile froze her. Slowly, I pulled a thick envelope from the bag and pushed it toward Martha. She trembled as if she were holding a monster in her hands. "Open it, Mother. It's a gift." With stuttering fingers, she tore open the envelope. A pile of photographs spilled onto the table. Photos of Ethan shining beside Tessa in Australia, putting shoes on their newborn son, Michaelis. Sharp images of a happy family. I wasn't a part of that family. Martha's face turned ashen. I immediately turned on the television. On the big screen, a video appeared of Martha secretly sneaking into the study, stuffing the antiques into a bag, and haggling with the smuggler while selling the mask. Her voice echoed in the silence. "Sell it quickly and send the money to Sterling. Let his wife go to hell." It was a slap in the face. Odora trembled, dropping the photographs to the floor. Her eyes flickered between horror, anger, and then pleading. "Serafina, did you know everything? Were you spying on me?" I rose and approached her, whispering in her ear. "Spying? Was it just a necessity, enough to sell your mother-in-law's memories, your own honor to support your swindling son and his mistress? And was it a necessity to put poison in my tea every night, and—" Hearing the tea, Martha collapsed, horrified. "You know that, too. It wasn't my fault. Sterling convinced me." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yes, your dear son made a fool of me. The insurance, the whole world. While he worked like a donkey here, he lived like a king in Australia. Did you think I was a puppet?" I looked at the two trembling old women. I felt no more pity. They had killed my loyalty. I've sent all this evidence to the police and my lawyers. Tomorrow, your son will walk into this house not as a savior hero, but as a wanted criminal." Martha's eyes bulged. Foam came from her mouth, and she fainted. Robert screamed desperately in his wheelchair. I didn't care. The next morning, before the sun even showed itself through the fog, I was already at their bedroom door. I didn't let them prepare or beg. Martha looked 10 years older when she woke up. She knelt and clung to my legs. "Serafina, please forgive us. Forgive Sterling. After all, you were married for 10 years. I pushed her hands away, as if I were touching something unclean. "Don't talk to me about compassion. You've already sold it. Now please get out of my house. This is my property. I don't have to support those who conspired to destroy me. Get out." Martha stammered. "But where are we going? I sold the house in Savannah." "That's your problem," I interrupted. "You sold it to send the money to your son. All right, let him take care of you in Switzerland now." I threw him a piece of paper with the address of the nearest police station written on it. "Or you can go and turn yourself in here. At least you'll have food and a roof over your head in prison." Robert, in his wheelchair, cried. He might have felt remorse, but it was too late. I signaled to the security guards I was holding. They took their suitcases and escorted them away. Martha's screams echoed in the street. "Ungrateful! Wicked! The daughter-in-law is throwing her mother-in-law out into the street." The neighbors looked on, but no one intervened. They had seen me take care of them alone for years. I watched them get into a taxi and drive away. Their last refuge, sold for greed. Now they were truly homeless. When the door closed, there was a deep silence in the mansion. I felt a great emptiness inside, but also a great relief. I had cut out the tumor that was consuming me. It was painful, but necessary to live. "I'm done with you. Now it's just you left, Sterling." The plane from Zurich landed in Dulles at midday. I didn't go to meet him, but I knew he was coming from the tracking device the private detective had installed on his phone. He wasn't alone. He was accompanied by a foreign lawyer and 2 burly bodyguards. He had the air of a powerful millionaire returning home. I waited in the living room. I had brewed Sterling's favorite exquisite tea. Its aroma filled the room, but it didn't ease the tension. My phone vibrated. A message had arrived from Sterling to the number Keeper of Memories. "I'm in D.C. Where's the deal? I want to see it now." I replied slowly. "Welcome. The deal is at 18 Quiet Lane, PTOAC. I'm waiting for you." 18 Quiet Lane, the address of the house where he cheated on me, where he ran away. He would be overflowing with arrogance, seeing this deal as the greatest achievement of his life. He would think of me as an old-fashioned salesman trying to sell him his old belongings. I saw a black Mercedes arrive on the security camera. Sterling, in an impeccable designer suit, stepped out, glanced disdainfully at the house, and rang the doorbell. I stood up, straightening my blue silk dress. I went to open the door, not to greet a husband, but an enemy who had fallen into the latest trap. The heavy wooden door opened. Sterling was there. His smile vanished when he saw me. "Serafina?" His eyes widened as if he'd seen a ghost. I smiled slightly, but lethally. "Hello, Sterling. It's been a long time." For a moment, I saw panic in his eyes, but that survival instinct quickly returned. He whispered to his friends that it was a family matter and that he would handle it himself. He still thought it was a coincidence, or that I was clinging to the house to beg for pity. The door closed, trapping him in the cage I'd built. He entered, his expensive shoes echoing on the floor. He cast a look around that was a mixture of curiosity and contempt. "Are you still here?" His cold voice was as if he were speaking to a maid. I thought my mother sold this place. Or are you trying to pull a trick to hold on to the little thing left?" I didn't answer. I just invited him in. "Please come in. We won't talk outside. The tea is ready. The flowers are in place. Only you were missing, Sterling." He frowned. My calmness had made him uneasy. He entered the living room. His eyes fell on the white roses and the opened old wine bottle on the table. A mocking smile appeared on his lips. What a thoughtfulness! White roses, expensive wine. Are you trying to win me back with these cheap tricks? Or are you going to beg for alms? He sat down in the main armchair with a superior air. He thought I was still the same docile woman. "Look, Serafina," he said, tapping his fingers on the table. "I don't have time for your dramas. I'm here to meet with the new owner of this house for an important deal. Be smart and disappear. Don't make me have to call security to throw you out." I looked at him, a mixture of pity and disgust in my heart. The man I loved more than anything in my life was now treating me like trash. I straightened my back as I sat. I looked him in the eyes. "You wanted to meet the owner of this house. You wanted to meet the seller of the legendary gold luster bowl. Here I am." My words fell silent, but Sterling just laughed loudly, as if he'd heard the joke of the century. "A seller? Serafina, have you lost your mind? A woman like you, who even asks my mother for money for groceries, would you own a national treasure? Who are you trying to fool?" He leaned down. "I understand. You heard I came to buy antiques, and you want to get some money. How much do you want? $100,000? $200,000? Take it as payment for looking after my mother and go." I was speechless. When he finished laughing, I spoke, my voice calm, but with an authority that wiped the smile from his face. "Is that all? Good. Now let me tell you a truth. This house, this land, and even your life are in my hands." I pulled a stack of documents from a drawer and tossed them onto the table. They were the deeds to the house, issued in my name, and a copy of the dating certificate for the bowl I'd sent him. Sterling picked them up. His face paled. He raised his head, his confidence beginning to waver. "Where did you get this? The mysterious seller? Was it you?" "Yes, it was me," I replied, my voice icy. "I'm the one who corresponded with you, taught you the art of gold luster, and possessed the thing you most desired. Did you think it was a coincidence?" He leaned back in his armchair, breathing with difficulty. Fear was beginning to consume him, but his greed was still strong. "Well, if you're the seller, we can get along better within the family. Give me the bowl, and I'll pay you. Consider yourself lucky." He still thought money could solve everything. "Cash payment?" I repeated with a bitter smile. "Are you planning to pay me with the money you got by selling my father's antiques cheaply? Or with the money you swindled from the insurance company by faking your own death?" My question was like a bucket of cold water. Sterling jumped. What? What are you saying?" "I know everything," I interrupted, my gaze sharp. "I know you're living with Kiana in Australia, that you have a 3-year-old son, and that you convinced your mother to sell the family home. Did you think you could fool me? You're wrong, Sterling. I haven't spent these 3 years crying." The room was suffocating. Sterling stared at me, sweat beading his forehead. He realized I was no longer a lamb he could easily manipulate, but a wolf baring its teeth. He tried to regain control, his voice soft and conciliatory. "Serafina, my love, this is a misunderstanding. I know you're angry, but I had my reasons. I did everything to build a future, to give you and my family a better life. Look, I'm a successful man now, and I've come back for you. It was a mistake with Kiana, and I'll make amends. Give me the bowl. We'll sell it for a fortune, and we'll have plenty of money. I'll give you whatever you want." Watching him made me nauseous. Did he really think I was so foolish as to forgive his crimes in exchange for money and affection? I didn't answer. I offered him a cup of tea, the same tea I'd made before his fateful flight. "Drink? Your favorite tea, remember?" He hesitated, fearing I had poisoned him, just as his mother had poisoned me. "What, are you scared?" I smiled contemptuously, taking a sip from my own cup. "Relax. I'm not as destructive as your family. I want you to live to see the consequences of your actions." I put the cup down and looked him in the eyes. "Sterling, one last question. For these 3 years, while you were spending my money with your mistress and your son, did you feel a single moment of remorse or pity?" Sterling averted his gaze, then looked at me with endless cruelty. His game was over. "Remorse?" he sneered. "How naive you are, Serafina. In business and love, the clever survive, the fools perish. You were docile and foolish, so it was your turn to suffer. That's the law of life. I owe you nothing. Love is the cheapest thing in the world. Only money and power are eternal." This answer was the final knife that severed the last bond binding me to him. I felt no pain anymore, only absolute emptiness and contempt. I shook my head and smiled, a smile of liberation. "You said it beautifully. Thank you for showing me your true face. So, we're settling accounts today. You want the bowl? All right, I'll give it to you." I rose and went to the display case, where I took an elegant red velvet box. Sterling watched me, his eyes gleaming with greed. He had lost all focus. He only saw the prize, not the scythe dangling above it. I placed the box on the table. Sterling lunged forward and opened it with trembling hands. The golden luster bowl dazzlingly appeared. He picked it up, stroked it, and murmured praises. There was only the obsession of an addict and the calculation of a merchant in his eyes. "Flawless. There's the crescent seal," he whispered, carried away by a fantasy of triumph. He turned to me and looked at me triumphantly. "All right, tell me the price. The money is ready. I'll give you a good sum when I sell it, and you'll retire as payment for looking after the house." I said nothing. I took out my phone and placed it on the table with the screen facing him. "Before we talk about the money, I suppose you should accept this call. It's more important than that bowl." Just then, Sterling's luxury phone started ringing. It was a call from Europe, from his main contact on the black market. To impress me, he put it on speaker. "Hello, Mr. Smith. I'm in D.C." Before he could finish his sentence, an angry and terrified voice shouted in English from the other end, "Sterling, you damn swindler! You cheated me! All the goods you sold me, that chicken cup, the vases, everything, have been seized by Interpol and the police. They say it's stolen property, that there's an international arrest warrant." Sterling's face fell. "What? What are you saying? My goods were family inheritance. I had the documents." "Inheritance? The real inheritance was stolen from the American Fan family. They arrested me. My accounts have been frozen. And you know what? I reported you. Your accounts in Switzerland have also been blocked by an international court order. You're finished." The phone hung up. Sterling's phone fell to the floor and shattered. He stood there, blood drained, in shock. "Accounts blocked, goods seized," he muttered like a machine. All the money he had risked had vanished. Not only was he ruined, but he was facing an international arrest warrant. I crossed my arms. "What happened? Good news from your partner? Did your money vanish?" Sterling turned to me, the fear in his eyes turning into blind rage. He pointed at me and shouted, "Was it you? You warned the police. You set a trap for me. Yes, it was me, I replied, my voice firm. I sent all the property documents to Interpol months ago. I expected you to sell everything, so you could also commit the crimes of receiving stolen goods and money laundering. Did you think I would let you sell my father's sweat and tears? Sterling stumbled and fell into a chair. He looked at the bowl in his hand, his last hope. He clung to it like a ruined gambler, clutching at a lifebuoy in a sea of fire. I still have this. This is original. I'll sell it. I'll start again. I looked at him with pity. A ruined gambler was clinging to a fake lottery ticket. Grab it, Sterling. Let's see if it'll free you from the handcuffs waiting outside. As Sterling panicked, the living room door suddenly burst open. Several men in police uniforms entered. Leading them was Kai Langston, holding a thick file, followed by agents from the Economic Crimes Unit and an Interpol representative. The room froze. Sterling's two bodyguards raised their hands, surrendering. Sterling stood frozen in the middle of the room. An agent stepped forward and read the arrest warrant in a clear voice. Sterling Garcia is under arrest for fraud, money laundering, and international trafficking of cultural heritage. Anything you say could be used against you. The sound of handcuffs closing echoed in the room. Sterling reacted like a madman, screaming and thrashing. I'm not the victim! She is! That devilish woman set me up. The bowl is fake. She deceived me. With bloodshot eyes, he lunged at me, but the agents restrained him. I remained seated, sipping my tea. Kai approached. You're mistaken, Mr. Garcia. We're not arresting you for this fake bowl. This was just bait. We're arresting you for faking your own death 3 years ago to collect millions of dollars from insurance, for money laundering through your parents' accounts, and for the long list of antiques you stole from your wife's family and sold abroad. Upon hearing this, Sterling fell to his knees. He looked at me pleadingly. Serafina, I made a mistake. Please help me. Tell them we're husband and wife. I stood up and approached him. The man I once adored was now a cowardly criminal. I shook my head. Husband and wife? That relationship died the day you went to Australia with your mistress. It died the day you left me to pay your debt. Today, I'm just helping to bring about justice. As they led him away, his eyes fixed on the bowl on the table, his last and fragile hope. Don't touch it, he cried. It's original. It has a certificate. It's mine. I looked at him and then slowly picked up the bowl. The light reflected off the gold glaze, creating a hypnotic beauty. I turned the bowl in my hand and then looked into Sterling's eyes with a sorrowful smile. Do you still think it's original, Sterling? You believe a piece of paper, your eyes, but you forget that I'm the one who created this illusion. You're lying, Sterling stammered. Let me show you its true value, I said, and dropped it. The beautiful golden luster bowl fell to the tile floor. Crack! A sharp, piercing sound shattered the silence. The bowl shattered, revealing the new, unprocessed ceramic paste beneath the elegant aged glaze. Sterling's eyes and mouth hung open. A scream choked in his throat. He looked at the pieces, as if his own life were being shattered. Why? Why did you break it? I wiped the dust from my hands. Because it's fake, just like your personality, your love, your happy family you built abroad. Everything is a fraud, a shiny veneer hiding a rotten core. I used my mother's authentic piece. I sacrificed my most sacred memory to create this trap and capture the greedy devil within. Do you understand now that what you risked your life for is nothing more than a handful of worthless clay? Sterling buried his head, trembling. That truth was more cruel than any punishment. He had lost, he had lost the money, and the battle of wits he had waged against the woman he had always despised. They led him away, humiliated. The clinking of the handcuffs was the lament of a wasted life. The trial took place 3 months later and attracted media attention. I went to court not as a victimized wife, but as the guardian of my family's inheritance and a key witness. I calmly presented every piece of evidence, every deception. He was faced with overwhelming evidence. Sterling was found guilty. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for fraud, money laundering, and antiquarian smuggling. A year later, the storm had subsided. The old mansion was restored and transformed into a small private museum called the Sanctuary of Spirits. There, antiques I had rescued from around the world with Kai's help and the authorities are displayed. Each piece, behind its glass, gleams with the serene beauty of time. One autumn morning, as the golden sun filled the courtyard, I walked through the garden, holding little Zion's hand. I had adopted him from an orphanage a few months earlier. He was a child with bright eyes and a sweet smile. Although the effects of the poison tea prevented me from being his biological mother, I had learned that motherhood comes not only from blood, but also from love and care. Zion stood in front of the display case, where I kept the broken bowl fragments as a reminder. He looked at me with his big eyes. "Mom, why are you holding this broken bowl? It's not as beautiful as the others." I bent down and stroked his hair. "My son, even though this bowl is broken and fake, it taught me the most valuable lesson about truth. Sometimes what shines from the outside isn't gold, and the original, even if cracked, is worth more than a perfect lie." My son shook his head, perhaps not quite understanding. Then, with an innocence befitting his age, he asked a question that tugged at my heart. "Mom, where is my father? All my friends have a father." I looked up at the sky. Sterling's image, the pain, everything had dissipated like smoke. I hugged my son, breathed in his childlike scent, and felt a great peace. "My dear, your father went far away to pay for his mistakes. But don't be sad, because I'm here. Your grandfather is watching over you from the sky. You will be a good and honest man, won't you?" "Yes, and I will protect you, Mom," Zion said resolutely, then ran off to chase butterflies. I stood up, feeling the fresh breeze. The past was behind a prison door. The future was bright and full of hope, opening before me like a new dawn. Justice and happiness are not things to be wished for, but things to be conquered and built with your own hands. And that brings us to the end of the story. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories